So you were going to have a test today, but the forces of good and justice prevailed last night. Kansas City won. We can all rest easy.
Does that mean we can have the pizza party?
That means you don't get you're going to have a bigger test if they lost. And it would have been fitness. So didn't I do this, husbandry, property? All right, do that for your notes. Just go and take that out.
Yeah.
Okay, so we watched that video yesterday, and I'll get that back to you in a sec. And then I will give you a little bit of time to read chapter 2. So we're going to do notes right now, and then I'll give you some time to read chapter 2, sections 1 and 4. Sound good? So let's do this really quick. We had this, right? The whole thing about once they figured out that children, the whole process of where children come from, storks, they come, carry babies. Okay, you get that. But once they realized that, and then it became my women, my land, and the whole concept of ownership of land really began to take hold. Because it's my animals are doing this, and then my woman, and then my land. And one thing that really happened is that, as I mentioned in class real fast, it began the practice of isolating women and women losing rights. It's not going to happen overnight. You're going to have an ancient Sumeria, women, not only, if women had property, they had rights, and they could have multiple husbands. But it's usually going to be the other way around. But not always. In areas where they didn't have a large-scale husbandry of animals, like the Americas, where they didn't have domesticated animals, the American Indian tribes, women had significantly more rights. And when the first European settlers arrived and started taking the land, it was really difficult for these colonies to keep women there. Women would run away and join the tribes all the time because they didn't have rights in the colonies. And not just that, since the American Indians were dying of diseases that were brought over from the old world, they eagerly welcomed new people in. So that's another story for obviously down the road. But two of the first big cities we have to get is Catalhoyuk and Jericho. Now there are other cities formed, but these were clear trading centers, and Jericho would be settled for thousands of years. So you see Jericho, which is in it's in present day West Bank, and West Bank is part of the Palestinian homeland, which Israel now claims for itself. That's another story. Catalhoyuk, which is in present day Turkey. And the big thing was that's where we get the storage of grain, and we start seeing evidence of domestication of sheep, goats, donkeys, horses, more north of there, what is present day Russia and Kazakhstan, that sort of area. And these were brick, adobe, and stone houses. And you can see this is a model of what Catalhoyuk must have looked like. Houses built on top of each other with exits and entrances pretty high up. So you can pull the ladder out and enemies can't follow you in. You see a similar thing of like adobe homes in Arizona, New Mexico. It's a very common idea. And so you defend the roofs. And they have pottery, and that means they obviously have using heat and controlling fire. They wove baskets. Now they wove a big deal about woven baskets for storage, but this has now become a very specialized skill where to weave a basket that can be waterproof. Very simple thing. They started using obsidian, and the thing about obsidian, if chipped just right, it could become razor sharp. And that's where you start seeing men. We have examples of men clearly shaving, and one of the big things would be shaving their head. It's kind of like a symbol. We can do that, separates us from animals. And 1958, these would be discovered. Religious shrines in Catalhoyuk. I mean, this was like, oh my God. Jericho they'd known about. But Catalhoyuk was discovered that in 1958, it just blew people away. But the thing about Jericho is, Jericho had been settled for so many years, it was hard to tell what was 5,000 years old and what was 1,000 years old. You see that with areas that have continuous building up on that. That's like for example, today, Rome. It's very you have to go through a big procedure now to dig down. Because every time you dig down, you're digging through an archaeological treasure. They're just built on the ruins of thousands of years of the Roman Empire. And then the Latin states that formed afterwards, etc. So it is on top of all this old, or all these old ruins, and so you don't really know when it really started. That's why this was such a big find. And that was a picture of kind of an artistic version of what Catohai must have looked about 8,000 years ago. And having a granary where you can control the temperature and store food changes the world. Changes the world. And this is another, that's a Jericho, and these are some of the religious idols. Those are some of the interpretations of what some of their art must have been like. And so we have these basic civilizations. The one you have on your map: Nile, Tigris and Euphrates, Indus, and the Ganges or Yellow River, taking the Anglified version. These areas here. Now, the New World civilizations in present-day Mexico and present-day Peru, they're going to be thousands of years later because they started slow. They came later, spread out later, so it's just a little bit on a different timeline, and they didn't have the animals. But these are the ones. The Ghanan civilization, that would form about 2,000 years afterwards. I just didn't have a map of that on. And so we are going to go into great detail on two of these. Hey, we got to pick and choose. So look at the Euphrates and then the Nile. And the part of the reason is we're going over the Nile. Okay, Mesopotamia is the first. It's really important. And I really like ancient Egypt. So we're going to do ancient Egypt. Just like I really like ancient Greece and Rome. We're going to do a lot of that. I hope you do too. It's really cool. And if you don't think so, at least act like you do. Huh? But I think you will. It's really great stuff. And so, So, very quickly, what are these elements of civilization that would start there? So we see this in Mesopotamia. And these basic elements. But we must get to something very important. A term. We all hear the term economics. And economics, most people think immediately like, okay, economics is like business. And that's a fallacy that goes on to this day. No, economics are how people deal with scarcity, with scarce items. And think about in Mesopotamia. What's the number one item that's really scarce? Huh?
Wood.
Say it again.
Wood.
Even bigger than that, even though wood would be scarce. You'd have to import it down the river, even though it would be some. That's where you can get like reed homes and mud buildings. Speaking of mud, what's going to be really scarce? What makes it mud? Yeah.
Limestone.
Okay, that's going to be important, but even more scarce than that. Water. And water's so basic, you all like, oh yeah, water. That's how do you deal with it? How do you deal with scarce water? You have to organize an entire system to deal with scarce water. And then we get to food, wood. It could be limestone. It could be any number of things. And think about how we deal with it. Most things today, we allow individuals to somehow organize, to own it, and then we have to actually buy it so they control it. If we agree, okay, we've decided no, most things, even food, you're out of money, you die. We have decided that as a society. That's how we deal with scarce resources. And it could be clothing, energy, and so on. That's economics. So is business related to economics? Sure, because that's how we organize. But it's also related to money, financial systems, credit, everything. So here is Egyptian art, but it's showing how they dealt with all these issues. Growing crops, this setting up irrigation system, plowing fields. That's economics. All right, so what are the main factors? Really quickly, we see that's all in Sumeria, advanced cities. So we see advanced cities. So this advanced city's got to be cooperative systems with government and management. So that's the city of Ur, what it looked like. This was in a National Geographic magazine. Here's Sumeria, here's Egypt. And the first cities, large cities, not these first trading centers like Jericho and Catohai, would be here. Why? Necessity. Next, specialized workers. So if you have surplus of food, you can pay workers. Artisan is a skilled craftsman. Like some of the most important ones would be those who made pottery. Pottery, you take mud, mix it in a certain context, dry it out, but you get mud, and then you bake it, and you get something relatively hard. It's no coincidence that those who understood pottery working with the heat, there'd be minerals within inside, little bits of metal that would go down the stream of the Tigris and Euphrates, get into the mud, and that would get involved in metallurgy. And so the potters would become very important. These are tiles made by potters to show Sumerian religion. By the way, you notice the elite, we can afford to have a nice obsidian to shave our head. So we're going to have a day where we shave our head. Sound good? That'll be fun. Josh, your hair is perfect because we might do it another way too. Another fashion would be to initiate you in manhood. You would grab your hair and pull it out. Bodhi's hair is pretty long too. Grit your teeth because this is going to hurt you, but it's for the class. Rip it out right to the skin. So you can't grow it back, but it shows you're now on edge. That would be really common. You got to grow your hair out a little bit, then we'll do it. The rest of it will just shave. So, then you have record keeping. So, what is the record keeping? So you have some kind of records. Like we have contracts, written legal documents showing there's already a state in Sumeria as late or as early as 3000 or 3500 BCE. We have, and sometimes they have these contracts, they would be put in these like little vases. And the idea would be, we would stamp out the contract, what it means. And sometimes just be symbols. And then whenever the contract, like let's say, Josh, owe me money. We make this little contract. And when you pay it back, we smash it. And therefore, the contract's themselves. But if you try to smash it before you pay it back, you've broken your contract. Food storage. So you got to, if you are storing food, you have to know how much is in there. If you don't know how much is in there, you don't know what's spoiled, if people are stealing it, if rats are getting in there. That would become something valuable for dogs, like domestication of dogs, besides eating. Now they can protect from predators. And what other animal would soon be domesticated? Kitty cats. African wild cats are these little tiny, they look like really cute little tabby cats. And they start domesticating those in Africa and Egypt. And they are like the nastiest, best hunters you can imagine. But they just like little, out in the desert running around catching rats. And you need a calendar then, like Egypt, to know when the flood's coming. And then once you have that, you start the idea of religion, you have to know the rituals. And then in Sumer, they started making laws. Okay, next, advanced technology. And I'll give you a couple, the chariot, pottery, yeah. We don't need, I'm going to go through some of these, so just advanced technology. And the last thing we'll see, complex institutions. Right? Government, religion, social class. So just put advanced technology, that's all we need. I'm going to show you, I'm going to go through and give you pictures of all the Sumerian technology. And once again, don't think, oh, that's pretty primitive. Hey, it's cutting edge if you didn't have it before. If you think it's primitive, go make one yourself. But with it, it's going to be social classes with a hierarchy of king on top and most of the workers on the bottom. Here is a religious stela or marking from, this is Babylonian. And you have classes developing. But one of the most important so we got complex institutions, is the market. And that's what we have to get. The market, the buying and selling of goods, that means there must be some resemblance of cooperation to make trade work. Trade and a market and the buying and selling of goods cannot function if, for example, if you have somebody selling a good and then, well, you make up your own rules as you go. You need rules, you need government to do this. So, just imagine what I was saying. So, Braden, you're selling me that book. And so you expect me to give you something in return, right? If we don't have rules of cooperation, I say, that's great, good. And then I take a hammer and beat them over the head and pick the book. The market won't function very good. I wouldn't do that unless I really wanted to do that. Don't do that. You need rules, you need government, you need a system. Maybe you need a unit of exchange. Those are some of the first coins that everybody accepts as value. That is a complex thing. That is a complex, advanced economy and therefore civilization. Oh, we're jumping the gun right here. So let's get to Mesopotamia. I'm not going to about that. So Mesopotamia would be the first one. And this is from Babylon. This is called the Ishtar Gate. And one thing, when the Europeans, when they start, take advantage of their power in the 18th and 19th century, they would send people out basically to steal all these things from various places. So German archaeologists, was brand new in the late 1890s, stole all this from the ruins of Babylon and brought it back to Europe. They all did. They stole everything, and most of the time they won't give it back. So you can imagine, Iraq, the country this is supposed to be in, wants this. And Berlin says, no, we're keeping it. We stole it fair and square. It's pretty horrific. Some things have gone back. And then after the disastrous US invasion of Iraq, about half of that stuff that Iraq did have was lost and stolen, which is even more of a tragedy. But moving on. So this is the Fertile Crescent. So we saw this in the video. And this area here with certain crops and a little bit more rain at that time led to this perfect combination of people moving out of the mountains and desperate to survive, desperate to find something to eat, and these certain crops and animals that they're able to domesticate them. Wheat, rye, cattle, almost everything we think of came out of this. And so what is Mesopotamia? So just so we know this, Mesopotamia literally is Greek, and it means the land between the rivers. The two rivers, the Tigris and Euphrates River. Back then, the Tigris and Euphrates River both ran to the Persian Gulf, what today we call the Persian Gulf. Today, they come together and they merge about 80 miles from the Persian Gulf. So that's this map here. But back then, you have this, so you have this valley between the two rivers as it got closer to the Persian Gulf. It was this area, it was a delta. Do you know what a delta is? As it gets closer to the ocean, and gets very flat, the water chooses different patterns, and so it kind of basically, instead of being two main channels, forms this massive marsh or wetland where the water goes into the sea. So it's full of all kinds of things. Obviously, massive amounts of bugs, etc., but all sorts of plants they can domesticate, especially onions, wheat, rye, and really, really mean animals, four-legged, very ornery because they're so skittish, animals that today we call donkeys. And they were really mean, but they could domesticate them. And so, these would provide them water. As they came out of the mountains, they needed water, and the summer would be dry, flood in the spring. And that's when they started to control the water. This is economics. Dams, canals, ditches. That's economics. We live in the American West. We're not quite a desert, but we're pretty darn close. How much does it rain? How much moisture does Helena get in the year? You know?
Couple inches.
More than that, but not quite. 10 to 13. It's dry here. The only reason it might not seem as dry here is, let's say, if you go to eastern Montana, where I grew up. We have the mountains, we get the runoff. That's the only reason, and it's incredibly dry there too. It's actually a little bit wetter in those areas, but really dry here. How do we able to survive? Dams, ditches. Think of all the dams on the Missouri. So, same thing, and that's economics. So Sumer was the first city, and that's why we call this a Sumerian culture. then would be one of these Sumerian cities that would copy it. Sumer would be first. Fumerment, and then that's all I'm going to do for today. So you have these people coming down to this. They have this weeds, they have this grass, animals they can kill and then domesticate it. They found these great food called onions. So I'm trying to imagine your main part of your diet being onions. The onions, though, one thing I would say, you think about breeding and hybrid plants. Onions back then were not near as tart, were not near as bitter as today. So think of it more just like just a different kind of, not quite a potato, but that's the way it's more like that. But then as taste changed, they started they wanted more, that classic onion taste, and they bred them over the years. So onions, then think about just kind of this big seed you could eat. We would not recognize it as an onion today, is my point. And they began to develop a food surplus. And here's the thing, because it had come out of the mountains, it had dried up, they needed food. They were desperate to grow foods to get a surplus. Onions, and then there are all these grasses, wheat, rye, barley. And at first they just started to pick them, and then they started to plant them, and then they could store them. And onions do store for a long time too, but not as long as wheat. And with that, now you can start developing a city. And so these are the big ones. There should be, I forgot a comma, Kish, comma, Babylon, and Deborah were some of the big cities. But these are all the Sumerian cities. Sumer was the first. And they begin to develop this economy, or this. So the main diet would be onions and bread. How do you make bread? Bread's really easy to make. They figured out real fast if you mash, mill the grain seeds. If you go to Europe, you go to Britain, for example, they'll call that corn. Any seeds from a grass-like plant is called corn. But for whatever reason, in the United States, we think of corn as maize. When you go to Britain, it's all corn. You mash it, you get this fine, okay, it's going to be a pretty rough flour, not like you buy at the store today. But it's milled, and then what do you do? How do you make bread?
You bake it.
We don't just bake. You just bake. You add water. Yeah, that's the thing. You add water and you have bread. It's unleavened bread, so it'd be like, imagine you kind of flat, about that thick pieces of bread. It's like pita or not, as close as I can say to it. What makes bread rise?
Heat and moisture.
Heat and moisture? You need something else.
Yeast.
Someone said what? Yeast. Where do you get yeast from?
You grow it.
The store.
Bacteria.
Where's it at?
I don't know exactly where it's at. All I know is you can grow it.
Everybody take a deep breath. You just breathe in yeast. Yeast is everywhere. So yeast, it would get in the bread. And they would see it start to grow. They would eat the sugars and the yeast. All right, so, and that makes bread rise. And then they've now retap it and you can buy it. But you can make bread, you leave it out, the yeast will get in it in 6 months. So if you leave it out, just dough out long enough, you get it to rise a little bit. But man-made yeast, you added it outside. All right, so I want you to read 2:1, 2:4. I'll give you the next. Tell you what I'm going to do. I didn't give you as much time as I thought. So let's add more chapters, right? No. 2:1 and 2:4. And so you have to have 2:1 read for Monday. Okay? But go ahead and I'll give you the rest of the period. You need a book. So turn around, you see that right there? Grab one of those, and then it says world history on it. And then just leave it under your desk. So you have one under there when you need it. So everyone should have a desk. Everyone have a book under the desk. Please put it back. Don't ask. If you brought your own, that's fine. Make sure you know those terms. Like everyone has the terms? Cool. Jim, got one more thing for you to do. This is going to be even more fun. This is your power. Are you ready? This is going to show your power over society. E. Okay, while you're reading, I'm going to run upstairs and I'm going to ask something about this. Who told me who told me that we had a who told me we had a fire drill today? Yeah, so it's Oliver and Travis. Thank you for telling me. I really had no idea.
Yeah, my teacher was talking about it last period.
I know I should, if the principal sends an email, I should read it. Okay, you got a few minutes. Right back. Do you like Auto? I'm always there. Yeah, see, I'm just so impressed. I'm gonna talk to Mr. Sam. I'll leave it time. I don't know. No, I'd have to say no. You can show why is it so cool? Why is it so wrong? Problem is, after this social, the chance of no, that's her. Thank you, Frank. Okay, I have one more thing I have to do, then I'll come back and we'll talk about this. I have to make a quick copy of something. Isn't this exciting? And then I'll give you a little more time, and then I got to go upstairs and or do that. Then I'll quick talk about the evacuation. I don't think you guys will have any trouble with it. All right, be right back. One more time. Yeah. Oh, shoot. Thank you. You know, I was writing without thinking. Thank you for saying that. But for sure, at 2.1 for Monday. Yeah, I was just thinking that's just that. Drop back. Okay, I'll give you a little time to begin the class tomorrow. Let's quickly talk about our evacuation procedures. I know you know the routine. So, everybody, just so you know, that's our number. Or 89, depending on which way you see it. 68, but. Okay, you guys, did everyone do this last year? And you all would go out to the soccer field. And then there are, in the soccer field, you have about 3 rows of classes. So pay attention up here real quick. Just put it under your desk under the, yeah, thank you. 3 rows of class, you have that. You have a big row of a bunch of classes, closest to the school, in the middle, in the back. We are in a perfect spot. We are almost in the very middle, in the front row. So even if, okay, everyone goes out together, we lose each other. Just go to that first row, so we'll be closest to the building, pretty close to the middle. Look for me or someone holding, where's what I put it, right over here, and 68. And here's the deal. I have to take roll, and so like if someone's not here, we lost somebody, it's red, everything's good, it's green. Just try your best to find it, because it's always a mock going out. And we're pretty nice. We just go right up those stairs, and then right out that door there. Just walk across the teacher's parking lot, and then right into the soccer field. This should only take a few minutes. So this is just our basic evacuation. We're going to have more drills down the road. And this one's pretty light. We're just going outside. Some of us we all know, we're a little bit more serious. Understand? And we'll get to that. Any questions? Okay. So I will normally pick somebody I trust, that we all trust and look up to carry this and hold this proudly to let us know where we're at. This is Oliver's the first one to mention it. I'll walk it. Go on.
Good morning, staff and students. Happy Friday morning. As promised, we will be executing a
Put all your stuff in your backpack.
evacuation drill here this morning. There are several reasons we would evacuate the building or part of the building. For example, a fire or gas leak could lead to a full evacuation. Please remember, our primary evacuation area is Northwest Park across the street. If for some reason during the school year, if we're forced to evacuate and it's really cold out, weather is unfavorable, and we would not be able to be outside for very long, in such situations, we would then evacuate to the exhibition building at the fairgrounds. That is our secondary evacuation area.
We might take a walk to the fairgrounds.
Today, though, we will be evacuating once again to the primary area, which is the soccer field in Northwest Park. When evacuating, students, make sure you stay with your class and teacher and remain calm. Stay out of the street until it is necessary to cross. You do need to report for roll call with your respective teacher at their location over at Northwest Park. You do not want to be unaccounted for, as this could lead to someone having to return to the building to find you. You need to know where you are. So just stay with your teacher in class the entire time. Teachers, bring your emergency clipboard to check roll.
Emergency clipboard.
Evacuation location. After you've reached the area, take roll, then hold up your green sheet or red sheet in the air against your clipboard. The green side should be visible if all students are accounted for. The red side should show if someone is missing. So at this time, teachers, please instruct your students as to how you will exit the building. Then discuss where your designated area is at Northwest Park. When you hear the alarm, please evacuate the building. Thank you.
Mr. Partridge.
What's that?
Mr. Partridge, will we ever get to the Aztecs?
A little bit.
A little bit?
Not as much as you know. Because you got so many other ones. But I want to cover them.
Okay.
All right. Any questions on evacuation? Are we cool on that? Okay, wait for the buzzer, then we go.
I have some.
Huh?
I have some of what?
That was his payment for that. I literally, well, you are carrying that. I should get. Remind me next time. Okay, everyone, try your best to stay together. You know the routine. Let's enjoy our trip outside. Go. Yeah. Go up the stairs and out. You can carry it if you want. Just throw them away back down there. Right? Those are down, and I will lock it. So. didn't have wheels. And so we do a little bit, but probably, you know. So that gun germs and steel, part 2, it has how the Incas.
Oh, okay.
And so that would be a really good thing to show. That would be a thing like in January.
Okay.
Yeah, that'd be a cool thing. Just remind me of that because I have, you know, it's one of those things I can do. It's a really interesting one. How combination of talent. Sorrow. Yeah. How are you? Watching. You miss study all? I can tell, yeah? All right, everybody. Did you enjoy the great outdoors? I haven't talked about our evacuation procedures. Do not let me forget that.
I'll let you forget it.
Do not let me forget. You ready, Alan? Well done. Well done. Ready? It's like you have spatulas. Come on. Try one more time. I don't know if you're going to be able to graduate. Come right back to me. That's science. Ready? Well played.
You didn't even try. That's on you.
I know I should come back to the first one. Well done. Well done. There we go. Show. Yeah. I'll throw it more time. Yeah, very freaking rules about us.
I know.
Which is good.
Look.
Yeah, we're besties now.
But I didn't know you were here. Thanks,
It's right. We got to do
Yeah, I was looking at it. It's so stupid. I hope you have some really weird TikTok pictures.
Yeah. He's a victim.
One that like. I'm so sad. My day, bro. Thanks. The way that I went out, I was easily in
Wow, well done. Okay, everybody. So, let me tell you something real quick. There's a very good chance that I might have to get text from my parents. And so I might have to all of a sudden walk out and call. So, things happen. And so I'm ready. So you do that too. If you might have something emergency for your parents, yeah, that's where y'all like to have your phone out. If not, the phone's away, right? Okay. And so I'm just telling you, I'm doing it now. Yeah, okay. Watch this. Didn't bounce at all. That's years of training. Okay, I have not talked about the evacuation procedure. We were outside. Did you enjoy the little trip outside?
Oh, yeah.
Were you guys in school the year we had all the bomb threats?
Yes.
You guys must have been pretty elementary school. And they just, huh?
I was in kindergarten.
Kindergarten or first grade, and then someone kept calling saying we're going to blow the school up, and then they say what school, so they evacuated every school. Was that? We had a few of those, but one time it was about 15 below. We all went outside, and there was snow on the ground, and we were outside for about an hour. That was good time.
My school's like right next to Carroll, so we just walked over.
You walked over. So the next one, we walked over to the fairground. Let's talk about evacuation procedures. Are you leaving? Coming back. Very good. I didn't talk about this. So you notice how they have with evacuation, and my second period class could not follow directions. They were backwards. So let's see if you guys can do it. But they have kind of like three, one row of classes and another row and another row on the soccer field. We're in the very front row and like basically right in the middle. There's like a dead tree and we are like in front of that dead tree. That's where and we're number 68, or if I hold the other way, we're number 89. See, you got two chances to be right. Now, what do? If we get an evacuation, like there's a gas leak or fire or something, what do? Yes?
Run and scream in the panic.
Close. This is the hard part. What do? The last person in the row, this is a very important thing that you have to do. You might want to write this down. You stand up, you take about 15 steps back, and then you run full speed head first through the windows. Now, why do we do that? And then you have to stay laying on the broken glass. Why? On that note, I'm out of here.
Oh, assassin.
Yeah. Well, here.
I don't think there was a
Why do you lay on the broken glass? No, not everyone else.
Another Mr. Partridge.
So I don't get hurt. I can pick my window to climb out to safety, and the rest of you, I wish you all the luck in the world. But a cadre of civilization must survive. You agree with that? If it's just a drill. Should we practice that?
Yes.
Yes.
We go out the door, out the stairs, out the door again. And so we just walk across that little teacher's parking lot for all us old timers, we don't have to walk as far. And go across to the soccer field. We have a shop, it's really nice, we're right next to the window. And right in the middle, yeah. And I will designate somebody, you've been picked, to carry that walk to the middle, hold it up high, and they just scream out, class 68. Class 68. Over and over.
Can you remember that, Tristan?
Do not. Yeah.
How old are you?
How old am I? Older than you.
Okay.
I know, that's a surprise.
You should delay there so we can.
Wait, so you were two during like
Right.
COVID, March?
I am, I'm older than those women.
We're young.
Mr. Partridge.
I am one of the oldest school teachers in the middle.
When is your birthday?
When is my birthday? To me, I don't tie myself down to one day.
Oh.
All right, so let's go ahead and get started. All right, everybody, let's go. We're a little bit late, so let's. All right, let's go and get started. Did you want this? Oh, then I don't want it.
Oh, no, I really want it.
Then I want it.
I really want it.
All right, I will still finish because, you know, I'm old, I'll forget. What do we, speaking of forgetting, what do you have to do on Monday?
Chapter 3.
Yeah, chapter 3. We have a quiz on Monday. It's going to be anywhere from 7 to 100 questions, meaning the 7. Yeah, it's on Monday. So when you walk in the door here, I'm going to start yelling questions. It'll just be a little sheet of paper, a little matching quiz. You want quizzes on Monday. And by the way, I know what you're thinking. Oh, I don't like having quizzes on Monday. And there's some issues with that for shortened periods. I can't do a full test on it. We only have 37-minute periods now. Remember the quiz intervention thing? Which I'm still not sure what we're doing. So Monday could be an interesting 45 minutes. But
No, he's talking about
I
like.
think the class period's only 37. I thought the intervention.
Yeah, intervention is 45.
Yeah. Yeah, the intervention's longer than the classes. I don't get it either. But I don't even think about the day. It's just when the time comes up, so if there's a quiz on Monday or Tuesday or Wednesday, and if there's a conflict with events, I just don't. Because I used to worry about that, especially when I was still coaching football. I used to worry a lot about that. And then I got to the realization, no, they're not to worry about every volleyball, track, play, and golf. Golf's gone for 4 months in this time of year. We'll never have a test, so I don't care. I just don't. Yep, that's what I do. All right, so let's go take your notes out. And I said I want to set up where we're at in the video. And I didn't erase this, so let's erase this. We're not going to talk about ancient Sumer in here, I've decided. Did I show you this map? Pretty good erase. Really good European history map. They don't make this kind anymore.
That's a lot of math.
Ready? This is scary.
Oh. Oh.
Oh, wow.
Oh.
Is the thingy okay?
The thingy. That's definitely.
It's like my worst year. The worst year is just this? I know that's my notes. That's supposed to be my notes. And then my question behind it says, Jessica's phone isn't working. She's just yeah, so I had taken to like Veterans Plus and I was able to get the battery replaced until Monday. I figured out
Thank you, good man. All right, here we go. What is economics? Yes.
Foundations deal with scarce items.
Yeah, scarce goods. And so, obviously the big ones are going to be things for survival, food, shelter, energy for heat, whatever it might be. But then we get everything else, how to deal with scarce goods. And of course, we're talking about mercantilism, what scarce good is key. And do you want exports or imports to accumulate gold? Exports. What is a tax that's put on goods produced in your own country? Excise tax. Let me give you one more word because I'll do it. Sometimes they're called tax, a duty, D-U-T-Y. They just say they put a duty on something. And that means tax. It's archaic, it's not used very much. They would say, like a tariff, a tax on imports would be an imposed duty.
It's like in the airport, right? Duty free.
That's exactly where that comes from. So those of you who fly a lot, good news. Duty free. Duty free means you have to pay the import taxes going in. Yeah, that's where duty free comes from. And it's very archaic now, but that's where it comes from. We live in Helena, so the Helena airport does not have a duty free shop. We barely have runways. But we have that. No, Helena's not bad. We used to be an international airport, yeah. Oh, it is Flamingo Friday, everybody. I've not turned on the light. You ready?
Yep.
Are you deserving of this?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes! It's Flamingo. Come on, give it something. That was heartfelt. Flamingo Friday. 4 more years. Yes, this was a gift.
You should like set it up like right up.
It'll move. All right. So mercantilism. What were the policies that Britain passed to maximize imports and therefore maximize the money they could get from the colonies? What were those laws they passed? The generic name I gave you. Yeah. Navigation Acts. Very good. Navigation Acts. And so they put an excise tax tariff. They put a tax on commodities. You missed the drill.
I did not. I went to ask right after because I had to talk about internships.
We talked about the evacuation procedure. Just follow what everyone else does.
Okay.
It's a good rule for everybody. And, the mother country provides manufactured goods. The colonies provide what? All the raw materials. And that includes everything from tobacco, molasses. What you make out of molasses? What do you make? What did people make? Yeah, rum. They also restricted colonial industry. What was the name for when Britain could not enforce these laws? What was that name? Could not enforce it.
Salutary.
Yeah, salutary neglect. Very good. All right. 13 individual economies formed. And they bickered, they fought all the time, they were not unified. They developed their own economy, they made separate deals with they called them the woodland nations, the various tribes that were being pushed back to the mountains and beyond. But we still have New England, Mid-Atlantic, Chesapeake, Slave Empire, or North, South. Now, I'm going to give you a little generic thing about these economies. Clearly, it's not everywhere. There's going to be a lot of mix and overlay. But this generic colonies will develop, which will lead to really different areas. Because of the big thing is geography. The geography was different in both areas. So there are mountains and low mountains in the north. So let's make a little table. North and south. I need purple. There's purple. North and south. Yeah, let's make this table. So north, we know, New England, Middle Atlantic. South, Chesapeake, Slave Empire, the Deep South. Yeah, they'll say the Deep South all the way up to the Civil War as a way to avoid that whole slavery thing. A lot of countries have past histories they don't want to acknowledge. The United States, once after slavery, wasn't that bad. And so, slavery. And north and south. So this is the different economies that would develop. I'm going to give you kind of a generic look at that. So because of the terrain, where you have low mountains in the north and higher mountains right up to the sea, it's a lot more rugged. It's really fertile land, but it's smaller valleys. It's not good for the big farms. So even the biggest farms in the north are going to be small when it compares to the south. So a lot of agriculture, most people will still be farmers, but it's small farms. Okay, there'll be plantations in southern New Jersey. There'll be plantations along the Hudson River, for example. And so, yes, they will have enslaved workers here. There will be enslaved people here. There's plantations right along the Delaware. But most of the farming is small, but very fertile land. So they could grow wheat, beans, whatever it might be. Small farms. Small farms. But because you have Puritans or Quakers or Separatists go there, and they were not allowed to be landholders in Britain. And so a lot of them were more mercantile, AKA they were more merchants, more urban. So there's going to be more cities in the north. Salem will be very big, and then Boston would have a better harbor, and so Boston would kind of absorb that. Or New York, Philadelphia, etc. Newport, these urban areas. And therefore, no banks yet, but there's going to be creditors. Now, they don't have much money either. A lot of the creditors were, the merchant class would loan money. A lot of times they'd have to borrow the money they loan, which is the way banking works now. But there's no bank. But there's always creditors. So there's always people in debt. There's more in the north. But you're going to get these other trades. Because of this, you're going to have, because you have more merchants and more creditors, that means there's contracts all the time. Almost all of the people who would be trained or call themselves lawyers would be in the north. All of them. And clerks and everything else. They're going to produce a lot more paper. So you're going to have printers in the north. Printing presses, that's big business. A precursor or pre-capitalism. But then let's get to the other ones that really made money. We talked about timber or lumber, woodworking, fishing, iron, hat. A really big one was fur. I can keep going. Do you get the point here? There's a lot of stuff in the north. Because the land, there wasn't this flat land that was ready to grow on. It was much more difficult to get. So it had to be like this. The South, the vast majority of free people were small farmers. But remember, we talked about indentured servants. They got the worst land. The biggest land were these slave labor camps called plantations. And even if they didn't want to have slaves, somebody said, so slavery is wrong. They're at a competitive disadvantage. So Their morals would change because they need to make money. What's the biggest crop? Yeah, tobacco is still the biggie. Tobacco. Not cotton yet. Not yet for cotton. Cotton will become the crop, but this is pre-industrial revolution. It's too difficult to use cotton. So it's still a relatively minor crop. Rice, sugar, couldn't grow sugar yet. The sugar still hadn't adapted to a little warmer, a little cooler temperatures and cooler winters. Rice, South Carolina is basically a swamp. So they could grow rice perfect. Swamp and gators. What's indigo? Or purple, purplish blue dye. That's why I use purple. It's a reed, so think of like a cattail, something look like that. And they would grow in swamp, terrible, awful, dangerous work. And they would just kind of sit it in the sun and let it rot, so it just stunk. Then they would beat it against a rock, and this purple goo would form, and that would be worth its weight in gold. Purple dye was just this bluish purple. If you wore purple, you were rich. That's why purple would be the color of royalty. Big money dye. In fact, indigo would still be big money until the 1880s. Chemical dyes. In fact, that would be the big industry, the brand new country of Germany. And where are we at here? We got purple dye. There's one more big business. Once you start this kind of plantation, there's another thing you can buy and sell and make a lot of money. Humans, yes. Big money in slaves. Buy, sell slaves. Slaves would be a way of ready cash. You're short of cash, which all plantation owners are, sell a few of the children. Slavery was horrific. Or you got to borrow money, collateral, to secure your debt. Slaves. And so the importance of slaves were a heck of a lot more than what you all are thinking. We all think of, okay, that's somebody to pick your crops and get money from the crops. No, slaves will become business. That becomes your source of wealth. That's something you pass on to your family. Slaves would be something that you use for debt. Slaves were something for easy money. I need to sell a few slaves to make money. Slaves became more than that. Slaves became a massive investment. And we need a term for this. And we're going to introduce it right now. We did economics. We did a few terms. Here's another term, and I've said it before. What is speculation? Our whole economy is built on speculation. Speculation is simple. There's something valuable. It could be a commodity. It could be a part of a company called a stock, a little piece of debt called a bond. Those are called securities. We buy, or it could be one of the biggest one is real estate, land. And speculation is where people with excess money, so you have to be pretty wealthy to do this, or humans. You buy something when the price is low, and what you're hoping will happen to it. So the price goes up, and that's speculation. You're speculating. You're gambling that the price will go up. And there's a lot of allure to that. It really is kind of nice. To make money from work is really hard. Wouldn't it be nice to buy something and it goes up in value and you don't have to work? That's speculation. Our country's built on speculation. Speaking of that, I'm taking my phone out. Job numbers came out, not quite as high as they hoped, but not bad. The economy is still doing very well, but obviously slowing down for very important reasons. So what did it? Stock market. Well, the stock market, AI companies are losing money. They invest way too much, and it's not going to be near the return they think it's going to be. And so the stock market is crashing. Just check a little. All my industrial labs. So people speculate in stock, and now they're going, oh my God, I'm losing money, and they're all selling at once. If everybody sells, what happens to the price? Everybody sells at once. And that's what's happening at this moment. We can watch it in real time. And since my retirement funds are in this, I'm not working every year. Unless you guys, we might start extorting money from flexion. Moving on.
Yes. That sounds fun.
Some of you are too excited for that. I want my vig, my cut. Let's say you're an immigrant and don't have much, be able to raise the money to make the horrifically scary trip across the Atlantic to try to get out of desperate poverty in Britain by the mid-1700s. Which section would you go to? North or south? Generically, which one? Yeah, why?
Because there's more like trade going on there, more small farms that are always successful.
More small farms or other things you could do.
Yeah.
Okay, there was timber and there was fur, a vast fur trade. But in the south, they had this vast plain that's soon scooped over by the big landholders called the Tidewater. And then with most of the fur or the trees they could use that were really valuable were in the mountains. That's really far away. Here, they're literally growing visible from the ocean at that time. Go to Maine, you can still see elements of that. And so they weren't as big. There's more opportunity. When the Revolutionary War began, the population of colonists in the south and the north were pretty close. Virginia still was so big because it was the first one. The Civil War, so you got more people coming over. The population of the United States, around 33 million people. So it's grown a lot. 23 to 24 million in the north. There were about 9 million people in the south. And 4 million of those were enslaved. So what's going to happen? And you have to keep this down. Because of the more diversified economy, the northern economy will grow faster than the population. And hey, more trade, you need better roads. Better roads, that means more commerce, more trade, which will encourage more roads, and etc. Here, slow-moving rivers, use those for highways. Here, no, it doesn't work that way. You need bridges, you need highways, you need technology, you need schools, you need education, you need engineering. The major colleges in the United States and education centers will be in the north. And it's still that way now. This will affect everything. Montana is very much kind of a combination of both. We have kind of little bits of the north, a little bit of the south. Montana is now becoming very southern. We're now very much like a southern state. But we were more kind of middle now. Montana is becoming Texas now. So it's kind of interesting how that can happen. And you can decide for yourself whether or not that's a good thing, but we're becoming Texas. We're out of that. We used to be more like Minnesota. All right, with that, that is a true diversified economy, and it's growing very quickly. Yes! And so, there's commerce, there's trade, there's activity. And so let me put up the triangular trade. How'd you Were you tackling someone hit you? Or did you hit the ground?
They went right into it.
I can see that.
I was
I've been breaking my thumb. Yes. Sprint? Yeah. No, I don't want fur trade. All right, so we have a developing trade empire coming here. I would have had this ready, but remember we had to go outside for a little journey or jaunt. We should probably save the flamingo. I'll have somebody responsible for the flamingo damage. And the rat. We did an earthquake drill, I don't know, just about 6 or 7 years ago, and we carried out somebody on a stretcher. Hey, we did the whole thing like it's an earthquake drill. And that turned out to be a really stupid decision. So they kind of half fell off. But I was enjoying it. Why do I have a stretcher?
Okay, somebody gets hurt, so you just also for you to sit on and scoot there.
That's not a bad idea. This was a fallout shelter in case of nuclear war. We would huddle in the basement in case of nuclear war, and it wouldn't. It's not a bomb shelter, but it said it would keep out some of radiation from the fallout. So we have it in here. But people are going to get hurt. So we have that. There's all kinds of medicine. It's all down here. Really scary stuff. If you look back there, see where the Viking helmets? See that gold container? That's full of really hard, now very old. It's called carbohydrate supplements. Little sugary, little balls of sugar that we live on. The idea was we'd have about 4 of those a day to survive for 2 weeks. See that up there? It's a sanitation kit up there. That's the toilet. Don't worry, we didn't have nuclear wars as of yet. And one more thing I'll show you. My garbage can was the water. Yeah. Have you been to the shelters in Berlin?
You see a couple every now and then, but you're not supposed to go inside most of the time.
They have one that's open there, but it's a pretty touristy thing.
Yeah.
It was supposed to hold about 7,000 people. I know when you live there, you
don't really check out.
Yeah, so they have beds for 7,000 people under 1,000 feet underground in Berlin and let people go down.
I've never been. I didn't even know that was the thing.
It wouldn't have worked.
Well,
yeah, Berlin would have been destroyed. Back to the fun. So maximize profit. So the whole idea is it ought to be done by ships. Ships, when they're sailing, they can pack their holds with goods, but they never want to be empty. It always wants to be in a situation where there's something in there. Ships are really expensive. This is the beginnings of capitalism. This is basically proto-capitalism. So they want to maximize profits, and that's where the triangular trade. And I'll give you a very generic version. You don't need to know the ships. Kind of get an idea. I'm going to show you this. And it comes right here. It's one ship called the Sanderson. I just thought of something. Moving on. So the Sanderson sailed from Newport, Rhode Island. One ship. And what was the big product they made there? Rum. They carried a few other things, but this would be big trade. So ships would go from New England south. Remember, New England's more mercantile, more shipping. And they would carry rum to the southern coast of Africa. Okay, you see it in that map, it's called the Gold Coast. When you see maps well into the 20th century, they'll literally call it the Slave Coast. And they would wait offshore and they would trade. There's all these really powerful, at the time, kingdoms here. And they would trade with these African kingdoms for enslaved people. Now, most of them, some were prisoners, some people they captured. Most of the people that were taken as slave or were sold to, usually, let's say, the Sanderson, most of them were like indentured servants. They thought they were going to work off a debt, and next thing you know, they're kidnapped and sent to America to become full-time slaves. Which actually makes it more terrifying that they were doing it willingly to pay back a debt. And then go through hell. And shipped to the Caribbean. What do we call the trip from Africa to the New World? Someone said it what? What passage? Thank you, I didn't hear that first part. Middle Passage. So everyone, that's the Middle Passage. And then, what would they pick up there? After selling it, this one's sold to the sugar plantations in Barbados. They would pick up, what do you make rum out of? Molasses, and go up to Rhode Island. What's the most profitable part of this trip, even though they always have something to sell? Slaves are the rum. Yeah, it'd be pretty close to the same. Slaves probably slightly more profitable. Rum, because that's a manufactured good, the raw material, the molasses. And that's a triangular trade. And trade is done like this all the time. They always want to have something on them. And it's a real problem. Like the United States doesn't export that much, near as much as it used to. So like the big ships that haul the goods from all the relatively low cost manufactured goods from China, they have to go back to China relatively empty. And that's a loss of money. So that's triangular trade. So you have these unique economies, you're developing this, they're shipping, and they're Americans. I'm saying Americans. They didn't call themselves Americans yet. So let me say colonials, making a lot of money. Colonial merchants. If you would have said in 1750, in normal conversation, and if you would have said, hey, they're Americans. Yeah, Americans would have been the original Americans. Colonists did not call themselves Americans. They would have said, I'm a Virginian, I'm a New Yorker, whatever it might be. And it would be that way well into the 19th century. So, by 1660 to 1660 to 1750, the population would go up by about 1,000% in colonies. So you see little population centers here to English colonies all along the coast would be relatively populated and pushing up to the mountains, which is becoming a crisis. Sure, the northern economy might be more diversified, but everybody who went, including people who would get involved in the other trades, they wanted to be farmers. Remember, that was liberty, owning your own land. And they're running out of land east of the Appalachian Mountains. But that's the population. Now, for some reason, I can't get this stupid graph to show, but the population is growing dramatically. And with that, ideas were changing. The old system, especially the religion that held everybody together, was falling apart. And in the 1730s would be a new thing called the Great Awakening, a religious fervor that would sweep Britain and the colonies. So 1700s, most of the mainstream Protestant faiths, whether it be the Church of England, Anglican, Episcopalian, or even the Puritans, the Calvinists, the Presbyterians, which are Scottish Calvinists, they're just losing numbers. Their sermons would be a 3 or 4 hour studying the Bible and looking for either how blessed we are, Puritans, or these are the things we have to do to go to heaven. Well, these outside of those main religions, Anglican, Lutheran, Presbyterian, Puritans were becoming known as congregational. And there's still the Congregational Church today. But these revivals started, where you have these ministers who were no longer ordained or considered some part of one of the mainstream churches, and they would give these either outside, somebody, or in a tent, these revivals. They'd be really emotional. People would have, as adults, have conversions to this new church, and the idea was, I'm awakened now. And it was a very personal, it was very emotional. They would talk in tongues, they would shake on the ground and quiver, and through this kind of religious ecstasy, and a few more things. The leaders of this would be called literally charismatics. Now, part of it was, you know what charisma is. So they were just bubbling with charisma. You know, the people that just give a speech. But also, charisma in an older meaning meant that it was more like charismatic meant that they carried the essence of God through them. So remember, we're talking about religion here. And these were itinerant, meaning they were not part of one church. They traveled, but they were gifted. And they literally started more and more calling them preachers. Preachers are giving this word. And these would be yelling and shouting. You see elements of that today in more Southern Baptist or Pentecostal. And a lot of the legacy of the Great Awakening churches would be at the same time that slaves were being converted to Christianity. And that has existed from descendants of slaves. It's really how interesting how this happens. We're not going to go into great detail about this, but a couple of things about this. Two now much more mainstream faiths will come out of this, the Baptists and the Methodists. The Baptists and the Methodists. So adults would be baptized as adults now because they were old enough to see it, not as children like they did in the Catholic or Episcopalian. And they were much more egalitarian. Does anybody know what egalitarian means? Okay. Yeah. It's a form of equality. But let's get this. Equality or more equal between the classes. So everyone got that? Egalitarian is more equal between the classes. And they pushed the idea that lower class people who didn't have much of a voice, they should have a voice, aka more democratic. Now we'll talk about what a democracy is down the road, obviously. But democracy to the point of it, you would have said, I believe in democracy in the 1750s. First off, they would have said you're a raving lunatic. But secondly, that would be the idea that people in the lower class should have a decision on how their life is, which was pretty radical stuff. A lot of that had to do with contact with American Indians. And we'll get to the founding of the country, which was democratic, and then they had the Constitution, which was anti-democratic, and so on. But democratic. Let's look back at the sections. And look at you do the little sections, north and south. Which one of those two sections, north and south, would be more egalitarian? Yeah, the north. The north, because you're not going to have more plantations. So therefore, which one would be more democratic, the north or south? Yeah, the north would be significantly more democratic. And it's like that today. There are more restrictions on voting in southern states than there are in northern states, by far, today. So the legacy goes on. Oh yeah, it's much easier to vote in northern states. Montana used to be very, very easy to vote. There are more restrictions today than there were 5 years ago. You're becoming more southern. The nature of our cultural changes. And George Whitefield was one of the first big ones. That's a little one to make you know. And add one more word. Whitefield would talk about something called your eternal destiny. You can decide your own eternal destiny yourself. What is eternal destiny? It was something new. We know what eternal destiny would be. That's, yeah.
Whether or not you're going to
Heaven or hell. Either hell or salvation in heaven. And that term salvation came about in the Great Awakening. Okay, there'll be a second Great Awakening, and then another, and then the term fundamentalist awakening in the 1920s. But so much of the way many people who are religious, especially Protestant Christian today, comes out of the Great Awakenings. It wasn't like that before. And today it's mostly 1920s. And so let's jump right to here. So we have a little bit of the changes, but while this is going on, this is still imperialism. This is imperialism. And colonial imperialism literally means they're coming in and taking over. Now, I wrote down imperialism. I've mentioned imperialism. You've read imperialism. Hey, what's imperialism? If a country is imperial, that means they're trying to get a what? Yeah.
They're trying to colonize new land and countries and stuff.
Exactly. And what do we call that area they conquered? It's part of their what?
Colony.
What would be a colony?
Empire.
Empire. Everyone write down empire. Empire. And empire comes from imperial. You may know where imperial comes from, that word.
Flowers.
Could be. The original, not the bad ones that come after. A dictator of the Roman Republic is called an imperator. Julius Caesar was imperator for life, thus empire. That's where it comes from. Back to this. So everyone got that. It's an empire. Everyone write down, imperialism means getting an empire, colonial empire, literally coming in and planting your flag and saying, I don't care who lives there, this is mine. And I'll kill you if you disagree. That's pretty much what it was. Why? Yes. Huh? Exactly. You want to profit off what they have. You want to take their stuff. So empire for profit, that's imperialism. Empire for profit. Now the profit could be, look how big my empire is. Now, we have colonial empires, sometimes like empires in Europe, which just literally conquer an area like, well, Germany, Prussia, which would become the precursor to the kingdom of, or the empire of Germany. But Prussia, Austria, and Russia all just decided, we want Poland. And so they just carved it up into their empire and got rid of Poland and made it part of their country. So the part we're talking about here, Poland would disappear. Won't come back till 1919. Here, Britain came over, planted their flag. France planted their flag. So, a few things about it. We got to exploit the resources. Get as many resources as possible. Now remember, we just mentioned we have the Second Great Awakening. We have people thinking egalitarian, democracy. We have this diverse businesses starting. And here we want to get money. And one more thing, let's say you're creating an empire. Do you want the people who live in that empire to have a voice in their own government? Even the people you colonize. You don't want them to complain about you sucking your wealth out. So what's your feeling towards self-government or democracy? Empires, by definition, cannot have democracy. Even for your colonists who go there. But remember, salutary neglect. Salutary neglect. It was happening anyways. So every place has an empire. They come in and they tell you what you're going to do, including the United States. No democracy there is, they conquer. Can't happen, because we want to tell you what you're going to do because of resources. One more thing. So, what did Britain do? To control the area, they sent in people they could, settlers. Settler colonialism. And how do they justify it? Does anyone know what terra nullius means? Is anyone in Latin? Really? Get a couple first. Very. Latin's really hard because no one speaks. I think it's made up. Romans. Anyone know what terra? Anyone know what terra means?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Earth.
Yeah. Land. Land. But you're right. Exactly. Earth. Nullus. Null. Ever heard anybody say that's null and void? Yeah. What does it mean? Huh?
Remove or empty.
Yeah, empty. So nobody on the land. So what they said is the land is wide open, this wilderness, and it's open for us to take. So we're not stealing it from somebody, it's open wilderness. Was it open wilderness? No. There were millions of people who lived there. Now, a significant number have died of disease. Or once a disease happened, they just broke down their immune system, they couldn't reproduce. But what do they say? It's a wilderness for our taking. And one more thing. What was created out of Bacon's rebellion and slave codes and those fornication laws? So they could also say, you know, the few people who are there, they're in freedom. So the British could say, we can take them. So, colonial imperialism. One thing, it's really hard to do when there's a lot of people who fight back. So Britain tried to do a little colonial imperialism in India. They could hold it for a long time, but they're going to be kicked out. They could do it in Australia because so many people died. And they could do it in South Africa, for example. Same reason. So, we're coming to, you have all these different empires forming. Pretty funny. All right, I'm laughing to myself. What you're going to have is, I jumped the gun here. Perfect. You're going to have all these empires forming. And you're going to have, let's look at the map. Britain, French claims, Spanish, Portuguese, French, Dutch, France, Britain, and Portugal tried to just basically shock India, which was kind of in the middle of all these competing empires were fighting over that huge area, shocked them and tried to take it. Philippines went to Spain. They took it. This massive place called Indonesia. The Dutch took the Netherlands and would hold it until 1947. And other eras are coming. And then we have these other big empires. Don't look at the color of the map, but Russia, there was the French Empire, the Austrian Empire, the Ottoman Empire. So we have all these empires. And they're competing with each other. They're fighting for empire and fighting for resources. And everybody's trying to be mercantilistic. And you see this right on in the colonies. And we first see it with the fur trade. So the fur trade, when the colonists first arrived there in the New World, they had to trade. The colonists had to trade with the various tribes to get everything they needed to survive. They needed food, they needed material, they needed help with shelter. They were helpless, and there weren't very many of them. They had to trade, and then as they got stronger, they conquered more land. But something was happening to the American Indians. Those who were there, they're going through dramatic changes because of disease. The tribes, because of disease, are slowly but surely abandoning farms. Farming, you need to have villages, you need to have a division of labor who farm, produce, you have to have a storage system. If all of a sudden your population drops, you have fewer children, the whole thing breaks down, they stop farming. And there's something else. As the colonists grew, they're growing their own food now. They don't need everything. So it kind of goes hand in hand. We can't farm anymore. More colonists are farming. Pretty soon, as the colonies grew, all the trade became fur. That's all the colonists want. We want fur. Fur trade. So this is happening right along the frontier. So 1640 is happening right here. You know, by 1660 it's right here. And by 1700 it's right here. But not as many French came, but they're doing the same thing this way too. Can we get the point about that? Kind of getting closer. The only trade for fur. What animal? Beaver. Yeah. So kill a beaver. They would stake it out, scrape off this hard, thick fur. It's really almost like a bristle. Underneath is this felt. And this felt was warm, it was waterproof, and what would they use it for? Fortunately, half taste changed, or there'd be no beaver left. And on that happy note, what was that? I would like, you don't have to come tomorrow. You don't have to be here tomorrow. I'm giving you tomorrow off. All right. Both days off. You don't need to thank me. Well, Kit Kats might help, but you don't need to thank me.
Thank you, Mr. Partridge.
That was sincere. I appreciate it. So you can play everything now. We got to think about it. How you use it for everything.
Why are we using it? What's there?
So it's gonna bug you. But you didn't break it. No. If you break it, it's a broken thumb. Here, let me break your thumb and I'll show you how bad. No, before you answer, yeah. Oh yeah, let me look at one second, okay? And are you just?
No, I'm just.
You two have to go together. You have to go together for everything, right?
Yeah, it's pretty much what we do.
Are you in every class together?
We
You're only going tomorrow.
no, wait, after the sixth.
You got 20 out of 20 out of
Okay. No, no way.
You did very well.
Thank you.
Oh my god.
Oh yeah. I mean, she blew a lot of opportunities, but I gotta say that the way you have to do we return it. Our clock was terrible. Just give me that. I'll look at that.
Jesus. 8:50?
I
I think you were a little late.
Yeah, just always tell me, that's perfectly fine. And just, and you have this in done, get it out, come walk over and get it, okay? Everybody, I need new batteries.
Hold up. It's like the guns. It's like, you gotta like, get it out of the way.
That's why I had 4 batteries.
That's my whole life.
And you're skipping all next week?
I am.
When's the concert again?
Wednesday.
You're taking the whole week off for a win. You should go Wednesday and come back that night.
Go Wednesday, come back tonight. 6 hours to go to the concert. Yes, just for April. And I'll leave
I mean, you're young and spry, but I was absolutely exhausted there. Because it was almost 6 hours.
Oh, God. Okay.
Because you have 4 bands.
Yeah?
You'll love it.
I'm not.
What are you gonna bring back?
I'm not. Something. I'm gonna spend so much money at the merchant.
You should get me either a signed CD or
A signed
shirt.
CD?
Yeah.
Assign singing.
Try to get on stage and sing.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I'll do.
We should.
I mean, most of the time, Billy Joe Armstrong brings someone on stage. I mean, I'll be in the fit.
So if you run up there and you like let me on, like kill you.
Then it's the bass for backstage, okay?
And then you get Billy's head signed for sure. Me specific.
For you, I think,
Yeah.
I think if I met Billy Joe Armstrong, I'll get a signature card.
And then you get.
And then I get
then
a signature for you. Oh.
Because then you would stop him and you would go, I know I spent like hundreds of dollars just to see you in the middle of the event, and I have some reasons to see you. But there's this guy that I know.
There's this one guy that I know.
That you need to sign something. Just for him to see. Nothing for me.
Nothing, no.
Just for him.
Actually, I just need to